Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In this episode, we're going to get that Slant Six up and running. The first thing we're going to do is a compression test. As a result of that, we're going to build some oil pressure and we'll check our oil pressure with the gauge I've got on the engine right now. And then we're going to finish dressing it out. I've got a bunch of parts over here that I'll walk you through. We're going to get them all installed back on the engine and we're going to get this thing running. Let's go for it. All right, so here's what we've got to get all back on the engine to get things up and running. So I've got everything all just cleaned up here and painted, ready to go. I did have to get a new starter. I think I covered that in the previous episode. I had to go back and forth with Napa a couple times to get a starter that would fit. So I have test fit this starter. And I'll explain when I put it on what I had to do differently. But I'll also put up in the top corner here the part number for this, because what was strange with Napa is this part number is actually for a car with an automatic transmission. And as you know, mine's a 3-speed manual. So part numbers are kind of messed up, maybe on Napa's system, not sure. Anyway, I'll give you the part number in the top right corner. And if that helps you out, great. Manifolds were a huge job to get clean. They were awful, but I didn't bother going to the extent of sandblasting, but I did wire wheel and clean them up really good, and then painted them. Through the process, I did notice that the exhaust manifold has the two usual cracks. You might not be able to pick it up, but there are two cracks that typically form on these. One is here. You might not be able to see that. And on the other side, I think you can make that one out. It's right here. I'm not really worried about that, but we might have some ticking noise through that exhaust leak. We'll see how that all that pans out. But again, I've already gone too far with this. Many of you are probably going to say, why are you spending so much time making this look so nice when this is not the engine for the car? I've said it before. I like doing it. It's fun to do. But yeah, I may have gone too far with some of this stuff. All right, so let's go ahead and get this starter installed. Because I want to get the compression test done on this engine. So let's start with that. Okay, let's go ahead and get the starter installed. I want to let you know that, as I said before, this starter, I did have some problems getting the right one to fit. But this one, I did have to make one modification for it to fit properly, a pretty minor one. This hole is the size that it came with. This one I had to enlarge in order to fit over the stud that's on the bell housing. So pretty minor. Just drilled that out to a larger size to fit that stud. And that was all that starter required to make it go. So I'm happy. Let's do it. All right, starter's all good to go. Now what we want to do is go ahead and get the car grounded. And so we're going to ground this to the engine. We're going to do that next. All right, starter's installed. Got a ground cable to the engine. Batteries grounded to the chassis. And we've got the positive cable ready to go on. I just cleaned that out on the inside a little bit. This cable clearly has had its day, but it's fine. We'll just get this connected now. And if you know Mopars and Fords, you've got the old steel me junction right here. If I touch these two contacts together, we should crank that starter over. Let's see what we got. Yeah, right on. I'll get you a look at that. All right, we got good crankage. Okay, so now let's get set up for the compression test. All right, this is the compression tester I've got. I picked it up from Harbor Freight in the U.S. I don't know, many years ago. Anyway, it's a great kit made by Maddox. You can see there, and let's go ahead and get what we need here. So we're gonna need this. This will go into the cylinder, and we've got our adapter there. Grab this. That should be everything that we need. All right, let's get this set up and we'll bring it back. Okay, I've got all of the spark plugs out, and I've got our spark plug adapter here for the compression test. We'll start with piston number 1. Just needs to be hand tight. It's good enough. Once that's in, plug in that. Get this out of the way. And we'll set this up so you can see what we're looking at here for result. All right, so I'm going to let this crank, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 times, at least until I can't see that needle moving anymore. Keep in mind, this, I don't know when the last time this engine ran was. Um, I don't know the state of the rings, the pistons, and of course the engine's cold. So those are some of the variables we're working with here. But doing this compression test across all 6 right now in the state that it is will give us our baseline. And so let's see just how even the compression is. That's what you want, right? You want to get each of these, we want each of these cylinders to be within, I think it's around 10% or so of the compression that they end up getting here. So let's test number 1 and see how we get. Wow, very happy with that. That looks like one almost 170. That's awesome. Let's hope the rest are that great. That is fantastic. Okay, get the next one installed. All right, we're just going to keep track of these as we go here. I'm going to say that number 1 was around 165, so let's see now where number 2 ends up. Okay, that's not what you want. That one's showing up as only 70 right now there. That we're tight. Okay, let's try that one more. That's it for that one. Yeah, so that we're at 80 there. Ugh, that's not good. All right, let's keep going. Okay, number 3. That looks like 150. That's much better. Certainly in the range of the 165 of number 1. Let's keep going. Now, I did not intentionally put any additional lubrication in the cylinders at this stage. When we're all done with number 6, we'll come back to number 2. We'll put a little WD-40 in it, and we'll try the test again just to see if that lubrication is making a difference. Number 2 could just have rings that are stuck, and we can deal with that if that's the case. It could be also worse, but right now let's just go with rings are stuck. All right, this is number 4. All right, that's a little lower. That's 135. I want to keep an eye on this oil pressure meter back there. I'm going to adjust that so you can see that a little bit. We want to keep an eye on this because theoretically we should be building oil pressure very soon with all this cranking. So we'll keep an eye on that as well. Okay, number 5. That one stopped at 120. And number 6. $120. Notice the gauge and needle? We just built some oil pressure, so we're starting to get happy on the inside of the engine. All right, so that's 120 on number 6. All right, so there are the results. Obviously, very worried about number 2. Otherwise, although, again, if this was a fresh build and this was going to be the engine for the car, I'd be crying right now. This is not what you want to see, particularly number 1 and number 2. But even 4, 5, and 6 would be low on compression for a freshly rebuilt engine. So let's take this tester out, and I want to run the starter some more. Let's keep an eye and see what kind of oil pressure we can build when it's cold. We'll do that now. All right, hopefully you can see that on camera well. Let's get some oil pressure built up here. All right, that's good. 45 pounds of pressure. That's all right. I'd love it if it was a bit higher, but for what this engine is going to be used for, hey, we should be happy with that. So now the next test I'm going to do, just going to come back to number 2. And we're going to throw a little bit of WD-40 in number 2 cylinder, and we're going to retest that. Let's go. All right, we got some WD in there. Let's see what kind of pressure we can build up now. Starter's working good. Very happy about that. Count the wins. All right, let's see what we got. It was 80. Let's see what we got with some lube in the cylinder. Yeah, we're just up to 90 now, so a little better. Number 2 is definitely low. So the only hope we have really with number 2 is that with the engine running, coming up to temperature, maybe with some cleaner through the carb. If the rings are carbon up and stuck, then maybe we can free them up with getting this thing back up to temp and cycling it a bit. That's our only hope for number 2. You can see that the WD made about 10 pounds of difference. It would have a similar effect, I would guess, on the other cylinders. I won't go ahead and test that because I don't think it's worth it right now. So there we go. So we know we certainly have enough compression to get this engine up and running. It's just going to be a little weak on number 2. So I'm confident now with the oil pressure, with the compression that we have, to continue on with this build, and I'm confident we can get this thing running. So that's it. Let's start dressing this engine out. Okay, we've got the spark plugs back in, wires reattached, and the coil is connected. Both the negative from the distributor and the positive from the wiring harness. So we should be good to go on ignition, assuming everything else works. But first, let's move over and start to assemble the exhaust, intake manifold, get that all buttoned up. That, I think, is the next logical step. So here we go. All right, first thing we're going to do here is take this new Felpro gasket. We're going to get this on and do a bit of a trace. You can see that we've got some orange paint here. And this is probably fine, but my OCD, or whatever behavior that is that I have, requires me to clean off more of that before we acetone, so I can ensure that I've got a good seal on this gasket. So here we go. All right, I went ahead and cleaned those surfaces and high-tacked them, and we're ready for placement here. Okay, we'll grab the intake. Before we do that, we'll pull these 3 bolts that secure the intake manifold to the exhaust manifold and to this chamber, which heats the carb, provides a smoother running engine in cold climates. Not really an issue for us, but we'll go ahead and I'm going to assume that's top. Right, like that. And let's get that intake. And we got our intake. All high-tacked and ready to drop in. We'll just use those bolts to get some initial alignment on that gasket. Not snugging these up yet. I'm just getting that gasket position because I want to get the intake and the exhaust manifold pressed against the block while we got the high-tech that's wet. Okay, got the hardware here. We're going to go and get a couple of these. Well, we'll get them all run down, but we want to get these manifolds secure while that high-tack is still setting up. Okay, I've got all of the exhaust manifold and intake manifold bolts secure. They're torqued down to 15 foot-pounds, and that's, I think, good to go. Now, these intake to exhaust 3 bolts to secure this chamber here for heating up the carb is 240 inch-pounds. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now and get that buttoned up. All right, those are torqued. 240 inch-pounds. Intake to exhaust manifold, 15 foot-pounds to the head for both the intake and the exhaust manifold. Okay, next up is this bracket here, which provides a locking mechanism for the throttle cable. Let's go ahead and get that installed. Okay, next up, we're going to go ahead and put on this exhaust pipe. Now, I don't have a gasket, so I've got to get one of those ordered, but meanwhile, since we're going to be firing this up, let's put this on. this is what I was fighting with there. These two bolts, just a little hard to access. But they're tightened up. Again, there's no gasket in there, so it's going to leak. But it's okay for now. And then this bracket back in here that goes from that pipe up to the bell housing. Just had to fight with that a little bit, but there, and that's it. That's secure, and we can move on to the next step. Okay, next up, let's go ahead and get the thermostat housing water neck on here. So just pull these out. No, I'm not torquing those. That's all right. Okay, that's good. Toss that. On to the next step. All right, next step is the alternator bracket. Get that ready to go. First, just get the bracket located. All right, that's as far as I want to go on that until I get now the fan pulley and fan on. Let's get that next. Okay, I've got the fan that's all cleaned up and painted, and the pulley and the hardware. So let's go ahead and get this on. Okay. Beautiful. Now we're ready, I think, for the belt. Okay, I've got the belt that came with the car. I think it's in one piece, so we're going to try and use it. I don't want to have to get a new belt if I don't need to, given what we're doing here. Go. Okay, so we're going to tighten up the bottom bolts. Now, let's get the belt tight. And for that, we use a pry bar. Beautiful. Good and tight. Okay, so let's look at what we got going on here. We've got really the front end of the engine buttoned up. We're not going to do the radiator and the plumbing for that yet. That will be after we get this to run for a minute. So front of the engine, I think, is buttoned up. We're going to tie the alternator together with the wires. I'll do that in a second and show you what's going on there. And then we're going to test for spark, just to make sure that we've got spark. If we're good there, then all we have left is the carburetor, and this thing should turn over and run. So Let's go for it. So I'm going to spin the camera around so you can see what's going on here with the wiring on the alternator, and then we'll show you how we're going to test for spark. All right, here's what's going on with the back of the alternator. We've got your positive and negative field wires that go back to the voltage regulator. It doesn't matter which terminals these connect into, as long as these are connected and the voltage regulator is grounded, you are good to go. So just get these snapped in. Okay, and that one's gonna go here. This black wire is your charging wire. Obviously critical. And we'll just grab the nut for that and zing it on. And that'll be it for the alternator. I should mention, I don't know if this alternator works, but I also don't believe that that's the reason why this car was parked. So I did take some time, as you might have noticed from the previous video, just to clean it up. It'll be easy to test once we get the car running, but right now I'm going to assume that that's all good. I did go ahead and get that charge wire secured, so it's ready to go. And again, very happy with the front end belts tight. We're good to go. So now I want to test for spark. And so very simple method, just going to use the spark light tester. It goes in line with any one of your spark plugs. And this is going to give us an indication of whether or not the ignition system is working properly. So let's go ahead and get that connected. I'm going to pull some of this tape back. When we're cranking, it's bound to suck air, and I don't want it to pull that tape inside the intake. So we'll get that out of the way. And let's get one of, maybe number 5's easy. Let's do that one. There we go. Okay, I'm going to get you in here closer. We'll get the battery connected, and we'll turn it over and see if we can see some spark. Okay, I've got the ignition tester all set up. You can watch that light. I've got the ignition turned on the column inside the car. So when I crank it over here, we should see spark on that light. Let's have a look. We got spark. All right. So we've got ignition, a working ignition. So next step really is to get this carburetor rebuilt on the car, and we can do a test fire. I think we're going to be happy. Of course, we could still have some timing issues or other issues, but the fact that the ignition system overall is intact, that's great. So next step, let's rebuild that carb. All right, got the new gasket down. It's nice, fits well, and ba-bam! Holly power! All right, that's done. Now, get this plumbed in. Okay. Now, get some hose and our filter. There. All right, that's good to go. Now, I've got a bunch of vacuum leaks right now on this car that I need to deal with. Well, in the spirit of use what you have, I don't have any caps that are small enough for the 3 vacuum ports on the carb, so I'm going to use this vacuum line plugged with 3 screws, and for now that's going to be my vacuum cap. There. So all 3 ports are blocked. The PCV port is capped. To see if we're going to be able to get anything to run here, we're just going to fill the bowl. And that's how we're going to see if we can get this thing to bark off. So let's get some fuel in a syringe and we're going to fill the bowl. All right, I got some fuel in the syringe. I'm going to just fill the bowl up. I need my light. All I'm looking for now is to see if the accelerator pump is. And there we go, yeah. That's working. Okay. We're going to get the key on, and we're going to see if this baby's going to fire. Key's on. Let's get this positive battery connected. All right, let's see what happens. Go for takeoff. Hello. I think we just got the timing off a little bit, but she's a runner. Okay, let's just get some more pump action in there. Let's try that again. Oh, giddy up. Timing is definitely off. We're going to have to take a look at that, but also idle is too high, so we're going to dial that back down a little bit. Okay, just going to adjust that timing a little bit more again. I don't know yet if I'm advanced or retarded. We're going to see. Boy, she wants to scream, eh? I guess that's it's because the throttle blade is. All right, yeah, that's my mistake. I'm gonna get the throttle hooked up here so that she's staying closed. All right. That's better. Let's try that. Maybe low in the bowl now. Timing is definitely not right yet. Let's back her off a little, all the way down. All right, we got some troubleshooting to do. Let me think on it. We'll come back. Funny story. We all make mistakes, right? Just not used to this carburetor. So, learning moment. The throttle was wide open and stuck that way or sprung that way because of the return spring. So, I have that installed properly now, and so it shouldn't want to run away from me. I refilled the bowl. Let's give it a couple of pump shots and let's see if she'll idle. Let's go. We got a runner. It sounds good. It sounds really good. All right. I think it's time to finish that beer. Maybe open another one. All right. Let's take a moment. Pause on that. Enjoy the moment. And yeah, she's gonna get warm. So we're going to start working on the plumbing. That'll be the next step. We'll get this thing full of water. We'll get the rad back in, all of that, and we got a runner. Valve train sounds pretty good. Got to work on the idle, but really to do that, I need to get a fuel supply so this thing can run. I open the doors up, and yeah, rock and roll, boys. So far, so good. All right, we're back at it. So here's the properly installed throttle return spring. Again, that's my bad. We should be good to go on the carb now. So that's set, and I've left the other vacuum ports of the carb closed off for now. And so I've also started to just put on the upper rad hose, and the lower rad hose is in there now too. And it's ready to receive the rad. I don't know if this rad's going to be okay. I know when I took the car apart and pulled the engine out, the rad was still full of Prestone, so it doesn't leak on its own. I don't know if when pressurized we're going to have issues, but um, let's see. We'll test it and we'll go from there. I'll show you the rad over here. So there's the rad. It's original to the car. I've given it a really good cleaning. I've flushed it out and just gone over it with some semi-gloss black, so it's ready to go in. So that's our next step. Okay, in goes the rad. Let's hope this thing does the thing. All right, we're just gonna double check the tightness on that one. Make sure she's good and snug. It is. Okay, our rad cap there. Okay, I think we're ready to fill with water. I'm just gonna use water. I don't want to put Prestone in this until we're happy with the rad. Oh, come on. Why are you leaking? And this is why you start with water. Why is it leaking out of the thermostat housing? Come on. It's leaking everywhere. Okay, so maybe it's not leaking out of the housing. It's just this hose. All right, I'm going to go search for a new clamp. Okay, I've swapped out both those original Mopar style rad hose clamps. Put on these two wonderful pieces from Like Leak Canadian Tire. Not the look I was going for, but you know, for what we're doing here, I think it's fine. So I do have one leftover Mopar style clamp on the lower rad hose. I'm gonna just hope and pray on that one, but let's fill this back up and see if we've got a leak still. All right, I think she's topped up now. And I don't see any leaks, so I think we're back in business. Okay, so cooling system should be ready for test. And now what we need is a fuel supply. So let me show you what we got going on there. So before the engine was back in the car, I did try to use compressed air to blow through the fuel line back into the tank. As you might have expected, it was plugged, and it's likely to pick up inside the fuel tank. So we're going to deal with that later. Right now, what I need is just a temporary fuel supply. So let me show you what I've rigged up here. Hopefully it works. And there we go, this contraption. So just a 5 liter jug. Um, this should give us enough runtime to do what we want to do, at least for this next phase. What I've done is just use fuel hose, of course, here. It's all the way into the tank, and what I've done is I've left about half of um, the, the nozzle that's usually here pointed inward. It keeps this hose pointed down and in the right direction. So, and then I just drill the hole through the cap. So this should be relatively airtight. But to allow for ventilation, I did drill a small hole right here, just so that it is somewhat ventilated. Again, for what we're doing here, it's fine. And then, of course, just I reused the oil filter, or pardon me, the fuel filter that was on the car. So this should work, maybe, I don't know, we'll see. So let's get this plugged in to the fuel pump, mechanical fuel pump of the Slant Six, and we'll see if it works. So here's what we got going on down here. Here's our fuel tank, and you can see the filter, and that line just goes right up to the pump. I'll show you that. Yeah, right there. So theoretically, that should work. We'll see. Okay, I think we're ready to start it up again. Bowl's full. We've got the fuel connected. Plumbing's hooked up. I've got the timing light over here ready to go because if we can get it to idle reasonably well, I'm going to check the timing, see where we're at with that. And the objective right now is just to let it run for a few minutes, see how it's idling, and check the timing, and then we'll pause and decide if today we're going to go further with letting it fully heat up the temperature, letting the rad system open up. Let's do step by step. All right, so we'll do we'll connect the positive here, and we'll do a couple pumps and see if she goes. Fuel's coming in. £45 of pressure. Fuel leak, fuel leak. Ah. All right, that needle must not be seating. Or it's this, I'm not quite sure. All right, we're just gonna take this bowl off, inspect the float. Something ain't right with that needle. Okay, I'm going to turn the ignition off and I'm going to crank over the engine. I want to see that gas come out of that needle. Okay, it is working. Let me show you what's going on in here. All right, got you in here. So, of course, here's our float here. Importantly, this right here is our needle, and of course the seat there. So watch when I crank, that needle right here will come out a little and gas will start to flow. Watch. See that? Now watch if I bring the float up and push on the needle, as the float should do, nothing comes out. I let off the float, it's going to squirt out. So what that tells me is the needle and seat are working, the float is not. Okay, I just wanted to check the buoyancy of the float. So I've got some fuel here actually. And when I put this float in here, um, plenty of, I think it might be hard to tell on camera, but there's plenty of buoyancy there. It's going to do what it's supposed to do. What I did notice, however, is, and by the way, it's not absorbed anything. It looks like this float is fine. What I did notice, though, is that the shutoff, if you can see that, I'll put my hand in there. The shutoff appears to be bent. Yeah, I see it there. So that could be, I don't know if it got damaged by me or what, but that looks like a problem. So I'm going to try and straighten that and um, just bend that back a little bit and bend it straight and see if that fixes our problem. Okay, I've bent that back now, and so it's nice and straight. And I've bent it just a little further this way, which means that the float will shut off that needle a little sooner. We'll have a little less fuel in the bowl, but this is something that we can use just to, again, test that we're not overfilling the bowl. And if we find out later through revving and what have you that we need more fuel in the bowl for higher acceleration, which we're not doing with this car anyway, then we can come back in here and adjust that. But let's put this back together and see if we're happy. Okay. That should be fine. Everything should still be good to go. So, back on the battery. It's probably got a lot of gas in it, so let's just start it up without any pumps. A little bit. Oh, yeah. I think someone's got the key off. I don't know who did that. Fired! Problem solved. That's what it was. That float just wasn't, it was bent on the bottom. And you saw that once I adjusted the choke, because the engine's still, you know, pretty cold. It's just been, it's just warming up now. Once I closed the choke a little, um, she was very responsive. Um, I still can't set the timing because this light is too bright, so I'll do that a bit later. But to the ear, this thing sounds like it's timed pretty well. It just purrs. It seems to run really, really nice. Idle's nice. Um, doesn't appear to have any vacuum leaks. Nice steady idle. Very little tuning, I would say, left to do on the carb. Um, we still might play with the idle mixture, but you know, as it is, this thing is it's running great. So, and you saw the oil pressure was up to nearly 50 pounds of pressure. Engine's still cold, so that will drop once she gets up to operating temperature. But you know, for what we're doing here, that's really, really nice. Well, guys, that's a wrap on this episode. We've got a healthy running Slant Six. Very happy with how this has turned out. I think it's going to be more than good enough for what it needs to do and move this car around in the next stages of metal work and body work. In the next episode, we're going to get this car driving. We'll get the transmission connected and filled up with fluid. We'll connect the Z-bar, make sure that's all working well with the clutch, and we'll do the brakes. I hope that goes well. We'll see. Hope to see you in the next episode. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, click that like button and subscribe. We'll see you next time.